And it's very enjoyable. I mean, that's certainly a great part of the reason why I've always looked forward to going to conventions, because the fans are so congenial and they're so supportive, and to get an opportunity to have one-on-one is much more prevalent than these vast things where you have 30 actors lined up and you're just sitting there. Hi. So I thank you. I thank you for being a wonderful crowd, a wonderful group, in the true sense of science fiction fans. And I don't know, that's about it. Do we have questions this morning? I'm going to need to be a little pulled because I'm still waking up. So I need your input.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We hear so many things about Gene Roddenberry, both the good and the bad, and I was wondering if you could share your impressions of the man.
How many people were here yesterday, by the way? Well, I can tell most of the same stories. Gene was a very affable guy. He was very pleasant. He was very determined, committed to what he believed in. I remember that when he did the pilot for that other series that I was briefly in, Robert Foxworth, you know, Quester Tapes. Yeah. They were all set to go into series, but Gene was insisting that Leonard should play the Foxworth character, who's a robot. And they said no, but we're ready to go to series. And Gene said, well, I'm not going to be part of it. I mean, that's the kind of integrity he had. It was really quite admirable, I thought. So the show, you know, after the initial episode, the pilot, movie of the week, it didn't go any further than that. And then when it came into Next Generation, it had been really screwed over by Paramount. I don't think it's a secret. And when it came to Next Generation, and they wanted it, he was able to pretty well dictate the terms so that it was his show, he was in control, and that there would be a considerable amount of past money that was owed to him would be paid before they were allowed to proceed. So I really did admire that kind of, you know, that kind of strength of character and the determination to stand up to the big guys, the studio. It's all very, all well worth studying. Because Hollywood is really a town of capitulation and compromise, you know. You're always surrendering something to get something, and if it's not in terms of the hard, cold cash, then it's in terms of the art and what you're trying to accomplish, and it must be very difficult to be the people who make those decisions, because they are constantly having to change what they believe in, and I think it's a corrupting situation. You have a dream, you have something that you want to do that burns inside you, a passion, and everybody's enthusiastic, and then by the time the deal is made, hardly resembles what it is that you were so keen to do. But Gene was obdurate, he was obstinate, he was defiant, and it, stood him in good stead for the most part. So those are good things. Those are good things. They speak to character. And as I say, he was a genial man. Not to say that he didn't have his moments. I think it's important, I think it's important in general to be discretionary in who we perceive as being godlike. I think we're too quick to anoint and ordain people who really don't deserve the title. So at the same time as I say that Gene was all these good, strong things, I also heard him get up in front of an audience and use the F word when he was upset. And I only say that because we all have feet of clay. And it's terribly important to remember that. Otherwise we can get carried away and think people like George Bush are important people. In fact, they're not. Okay, I'm rambling because my brain isn't altogether there yet, so you have to just bear with me.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Hey guys, okay. Yeah, don't worry, George Bush isn't around. We all agree with you on that part. J. Michael Straczynski, you just talked about Gene Roddenberry there. In comparison, J. Michael Straczynski wrote and directed a lot of the Babylon 5 episodes, and were a lot of them you were in with those. What were your impressions of him as an overall writer, director? Listening to his commentaries, he has nothing but praise for you for what you've done to the Lester character. I'd like to get what do you think of him?
Well, no, it's more than mutual. I am a great fan of Joe. He was responsible for my being in the show. I had a heart attack and I wasn't going to be able to be in the show. I wasn't going to be able to play the character that he had written for me. And he was really the first person I called in the hospital 11 years ago, saying that I wasn't going to be available. And his first reaction was to say, well, we'll postpone shooting that episode. Well, they ran out of episodes and they ran out of scripts and they needed to shoot it, so they recast it with a brilliant English actor. And it was very good, I thought. But that did not deter him from fulfilling his promise. And he wrote Bester. And I can go on forever, wax poetic about how much fun it was to do that character and how enormously grateful I am for him being so supportive and being such a buddy. And as I said yesterday, I hear now that there's a possibility that he's going to be writing a new Star Trek series. And I can't think of better hands to put it into. I think it'll be very exciting if indeed it does bear fruit. He's a brilliant guy, and I love him to death. I think he's terrific. So look for that. If that's going to happen, that's going to be terrific for Star Trek fans. You see, he was always a Star Trek fan, even when he was, I think that Star Trek inspired him to do Babylon as a matter of fact. Yes?
What did you think about the controversy surrounding Leonard Nimoy's book of photography, Shahina? Did you ever talk to Leonard about his artistic vision of Shahina? And I just want to know your impressions about his photography and the religious aspects of his photography in particular.
Don't know what you're talking about. I know I did a book of photography. I didn't read it, alas. And I don't know what the religious implications are. So I'm not prepared to discuss that intelligently. It's moot whether I'm prepared to discuss anything intelligently. But certainly that particular, I know that he was very devoted to his photography, and he takes it very seriously.
They were images of the female aspect of gods that he took from the Jewish Kabbalah.
Yeah. Are they cute?
Good morning, Mr. Koenig. I just want to say I've enjoyed your work very much, and thank you for coming to Toronto Track. Seeing as you've worked in so many science fiction shows in your acting career, do you generally enjoy science fiction in your leisure time as well, either watching any different shows or reading science fiction? And also on a side note, just regarding the recent tragic passing of Mr. Richard Biggs, I was wondering if you had any particular memory that you might share with us of working with him.
Well, let me address the second one first. Richard was really a good person. He was a man of, he was a good heart and kind man. He was very, very tough. Learning of his passing. It's really so terribly unfair. So tragic. You know, in the prime of his life, 42 years old, and beautiful family. It still chokes me up a little bit. We got along well. I mean, I wasn't a real close friend, but we frequently found ourselves at the same conventions. I did invite him over to my last party I had at my house when he came by. At the memorial service, they asked any of us who were there to remember for the group any experiences they'd like to share. The one that I recall was this, we had met at several conventions, and one time, in addition to the hug, which all actors give each other, standard operating procedure, he kissed me. And my first reaction was to ask myself, well, how do I feel about this? And then I decided that I liked it. It was nice. It made me feel like, I was his uncle or his daddy or something. It made me feel very good. And then after that, when I'd see him at the convention, I feel like the convention wasn't quite whole, wasn't quite complete, unless I got another kiss from him. That's the kind of guy he was. Just a really good man with a good soul and a straight shooter. It's tough. It's really tough to lose somebody like that. And so young, from where I'm standing, that's pretty darn young. It seems so unjust. So I have only good things to say about Richard. We did a scene together on B5, and I think it had something to do with him telling me that I shouldn't be so cynical about human being, about the normals, that people are people and they should be able to get along together, which I think was certainly his philosophy. If you didn't get to know him, you missed a really neat opportunity, because I think you all would have liked him very much.
Good morning. I was wondering, when you played Chekhov, when you look back over the years, in the series and the movies, is there anything that you would like to have seen happen to Chekhov, like any kind of a special storyline or anything that just didn't materialize in either of the series of movies?
Oh yeah. I'm going to preface this by saying, whenever it seems like whenever I go to a convention and I get candid, about Star Trek, somebody always goes away saying, "Boy, is he bitter." And that really infuriates me, because I'm not bitter. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to have been involved in Star Trek. Doesn't mean that I didn't want more, and that I didn't, pine for a more substantial role and a more fulfilling role. But that does not preclude a high degree of gratitude for getting a chance that very few actors have, to be involved in a project that goes on ad infinitum, practically, and brings lots of benefits, not only financial benefits, but recognition, the opportunity to do other things. So, having said all that, I'm not bitter. And but yeah, I would have liked to see. I'd like to see something that was where we get into the mind of Chekhov, where he has some sort of a situation that he has to deal with that requires a moral conflict or a personal conflict of some kind, where we see internal struggle, which is revelatory and gives us insight into who the character is. Most of the time, Chekhov is sitting there and saying, what Victor 4 Kitty, what Victor 5 Kitty, or Kitty. Aye, sir, Probably one of the most difficult lines Chekhov ever had to say in the series days. We are going to settle down now, aren't we? Good. Back in the series days, when we looked out into space, all we saw was the sound stage. We didn't even have a blue screen. We just looked out and when we were supposed to see strange things happening, what we really saw were the crew people standing around smoking cigarettes, scratching themselves, which was very disconcerting, very disconcerting. So to make it so that we were all looking in the same place and we're not being distracted, someone had the idea of erecting this metal stanchion with a white metal flag on it. It said, "Now everybody, look at that. Look at that. When you're supposed to be looking out in space, look at that. Don't look at the guys who haven't had a bath." Well, that was fine. That was fine, and that certainly helped to a degree. But then, on occasion, one of these same guys would bring in the centerfold from Playboy and tack it to that white metal flag. And there was poor Chekhov, hormones bouncing all over the place. I mean, really, just in a constant state of agitation. And have to look at this voluptuous, beautiful, unclothed lady, lips slightly parted, arms wide, beckoning very, very specifically to Chekhov. While, in fact, I was supposed to be looking at all sorts of extraterrestrial grotesquerie, and have to look and say, "Captain, I don't know what that is." See, more scenes like that. That's what I really want. Well, that's what I want. I really want to just to be involved. I didn't want to promote the action. I didn't want to be there simply as part of the exposition, as an expository character that told plot line. Kirk, got to do all that. He got to feel things and the girls and all of that. But more than that, more than the girl thing, which was always very nice. He got to deal with it. There was a process going on, an emotional and cerebral, intellectual process that was going on that called upon some acting skill. That wasn't necessarily the case most of the time.
Were you ever in the cave? And what part did you play?
Cage? No, I wasn't on that. I wasn't on the first year episodes. I came on the second season. So, and that was shot in the first year, I believe. Right? Yes,
Have you seen any of the Star Trek shows that have come on after the Next Generation? And if so, what is your opinion on them and the direction that Star Trek has been going recently?
I really don't. I'm not hedging and I'm not tap dancing. The fact of the matter is that I really haven't watched them. I finally got around to watching The Next Generation after it'd been on the air about 4 years. And I really thought some of the stories were wonderful. Some very clever intellectual exercises and just a lot of fun. But I never really got past The Next Generation. I may have watched one or two of Deep Space Nine. My son was on one of the Deep Space Nine, so I watched that episode. I may have watched a couple of Voyager. I haven't seen anything of Enterprise to speak of. So I'm not really in a position to speak with any sense of authority about the quality of those shows and what the direction it's going in. I'm sorry, I just don't know what direction it's going in. Evidently, it's not going in a terrific direction because the show may not be picked up. It's not by UPN anyway. It might have to go to another cable outlet. That's rumor, but that's what I've heard. Somebody else, yes.
Over the 50 years, the Star Trek characters have sort of taken on a life of their own beyond the actors and beyond the 50 years. 40 years. So.
Give me 5 minutes and I'll get up.
Over the many decades, the characters have taken on a life of their own outside of the actors and outside of the official franchise. And I know I particularly enjoy Chekhov humor, making light of his foibles in his position. And I think Chekhov is more of a living character than many of them. Do you have an experience to share about an encounter with the living Chekhov character that touched you or amused you? Like in homage or in humor about Chekhov or anything like that sticks in your mind?
I'm not following you. The real Chekhov? The living Chekhov? I'm not sure.
The character of Chekhov that is still growing and still being portrayed in the world through humor, through homage, through on The Simpsons, things like that.
That kind of thing. Well, what they did on Futurama, I thought was great. I thought it was great fun. If I'm following you, because I'm not familiar with an homage to Pavel Chekhov, maybe Anton Chekhov, but not Pavel Chekhov. But not aware. Occasionally, as a matter of fact, quite to the contrary, I was having dinner with my family and my daughter and her, at that time, her fiance, they're now married. And he got up to go to the bathroom just as two guys passed by, and they stopped and they looked at me. And so he heard the conversation as he went by them. When we came back from the restroom, he said, those two guys were talking about you, and one said, hey, I'm trying to think of how the conversation went. Hey, I said, hey, it's Sulu, we just saw Sulu. And the guy said, no, that's not Sulu, Sulu's the Scottish guy. So with 3 opportunities there, they picked the wrong one. And then I once was walking down the street with some people, and a bunch of young guys came out of a bar. They looked at me, and one guy started screaming, it's Sulu! It's Sulu! Everybody crowd around! We're gonna get beaten up! They hugged each other, and I was in the middle of the Then there was a guy in the airport who said, I can't tell you what a big fan I am of yours, Mr. Klingon. Or the time Jimmy and I were in Charlotte, North Carolina, and we were going to be picked up in this huge limo to be taken to the opening of a video store. And it was the only time I ever agreed to wear my uniform on a personal appearance. They were paying us an outrageous amount of money, so I said, okay. So we're standing in the lobby waiting for the limo. And the matron, the type lady, very elegant, had just checked in. She walked over to us and said, y'all take my bags to the room now. Jimmy, what are you putting on? What? I said, put out my hand for the dollar. Those are the living, breathing Chekhov experiences. I know of no one who decided to make a career in espionage or anything to do with Russians as a consequence of watching on Chekhov, on Star Trek. I mean, DeForest had, scores of stories about people becoming doctors, and Jimmy had, myriad tales of people who went into engineering. I don't know what anybody would get from playing Chekhov, unless it's learn the language. I think perhaps that had happened over the time. I once had I was at a point where I was getting very sensitive about the accent, because the college professors were telling their students that there's no W in the Russian language. Therefore, I would never, that when I say Wessel, nuclear Wessels, that is incorrect, and it's a bastardization because the Russians don't have that letter. Well, they may not have that letter, but there is an absolute inversion. They get confused, I guess. And it's also with certain German dialects, if you listen. They say the W instead of the V. So I have people, young people coming up to me, very, very audaciously challenging me on the use of dialect. And I knew that it was not true because my old man was from Lithuania and he spoke Russian and he talked, he said, pass the vegetables. So one day I was doing a convention, I think it was in New York, and these two young women came up to me and they started saying, "Hello, Mr. Chekhov, how are you? It was so nice to meet you." And I said, "Look, you don't like the accent, that's great. What have I done to you? Go bother somebody else." And they look at me and their whole demeanor changed. They say, "What are you talking about? We're from the Soviet Union." Walter, the jerk. Somebody else.
Yes, hi. The comment you're making earlier about Enterprise might not be picked up. The Trek.com webpage announced it has been picked up for a 4th season by UPN. But Paramount dropped the price from 1.7 to 8, a little over 800,000 an episode.
So what does that mean? The actors are getting nice?
I have no idea. That was the deal to get UPN to pick it up. Paramount had to drop the price of the picture, the shows. Anyway, the question that I had was, when you were filming Wrath of Khan, considering Khan was on Enterprise in season 1, when Chekhov wasn't there, was there a scene that ended up on the cutting room floor that explained how Khan knew Chekhov and that didn't make it into the final print?
So you obviously weren't here yesterday.
Correct. I was manning the Anime North table, so if I'm repeating myself, sorry, humor me.
You're not repeating yourself, you're repeating somebody else.
You know what I meant.
Should I humor him or am I going to bore the rest of you? Chekhov was in fact on the Enterprise during that period of spacing. He was working on the 3rd deck behind the boiler room. Don't laugh, don't laugh. He was very ill with a condition known as Malapropsky's malady, which is kind of a 23rd century version of Montezuma's revenge. And he was in the bathroom and ensconced there for hours and hours. Like poor Mr. Khan, his genetically engineered kidney is about to explode, pounded pitifully on the bathroom door, begging to be let in, until finally the door swung open, Chekhov stepped out, Khan grabbed him and said, "Your face, I will never forget." When I first met Fernando, we met at a cocktail party that Nick Meyer, the director, gave. And I went up to him, because I had not been on, obviously, that show. And I said, "I'm Walter Koenig, and I play Chekhov." He went, "Oh, we are going to get on wonderfully together." And I said, "I'm sure we will." It was very sweet. Really, just kind of enveloped you with this wonderful theatricality. And he said, "Oh, by the way, who is going to play Terrell?" Well, at that point, Paul Winfield hadn't been cast. So I said, "Well, I don't know." And he says, "Oh, never mind. We will all be wonderful together." And then this little quirk that I have, I decided, I said, "Well, actually, I do know who's going to play it." He said, "Yes, yes." I said, "Fernando Lamas." And he went, "Oh." For those of you who don't know who Fernando Lamas was also a Latin star and they had a big competition between the two of them. But he was delightful. Ricardo Montalbano was absolutely delightful. He was a charming man. I remember the first day he was a movie star. He had carried films. He was the top name on the film. And I was used to seeing some temperament on the leads in our show. And I remember the first day we were doing one of those very dramatic scenes and rehearsing it. And Nick called us into his trailer, Nick Meyer, and turned to Ricardo and very guilelessly started to tell him, that, what you're doing, Ricardo, is just too big. It's just too broad, And I went, oh God, here it comes, he's going to start screaming. And Ricardo said, oh, I see your point, yes. It wasn't any explosion. It wasn't like our set. It was really quite delightful. And, he was so cooperative, so willing to throw himself into everything and do such an interesting job.
I've got I've got a whole multitude of questions I'd love to ask you. I want to ask you about Moontrap. I want to ask you about this, that, the other thing. But I've got really one stupid question. In the closing credits of MASH, there's a Dennis Koenig. Are you related?
No.
Okay. And the other question I wanted to ask is, do you ever feel sorry for Chekhov for any time there was going to be something bad happening? It'd be either a red shirt dying or Chekhov getting hurt. Do you ever feel sorry for him?
Never. I rejoiced in that. I reveled in that because it meant Chekhov had something to do. All those moments, that they were Chekhov's moments, and meant, he wasn't just part of the movable furniture. I look forward to all that stuff. I also look forward to the couple of times they had little dalliances with other young ladies. It was kind of fun.
What current projects are you working on? Are you doing any theater or any writing for TV right now?
Well, I'm about to embark on a short film that I wrote and am directing. It'll run about 20 pages, and it's called What If, and I'm going to be shooting it a few days in July and a few days in August. And the hope is that if it comes out as well as I'm anticipating, that it will be a festival entry, and we'll see what we can do with it along those lines. I can't imagine it having any commercial, any recompense commercially, but there can be a lot. I hope I don't sound too pretentious about this, but there can be a lot of recompense spiritually and artistically, and at this juncture in my life, those are important things. I don't want to waste any more time. I don't want to wait for the phone to ring. I have 2 screenplays that have been optioned and re-optioned, and neither of them are made. They're both about $1.5 million. Tremendous amount of enthusiasm all over about these 2 screenplays. But I am waiting for something to happen. I don't want to wait any longer, so I've written this piece. It's a far more modest piece, but I think it's a good idea and a good concept, and we'll have it finished by the end of August. Go into post-production, doing the editing and scoring it. Have to find the music, and then have it available. Who knows? I might even bring it along to conventions and show it. When I started this answer, I had 5 minutes, and now I'm sure I have 30 seconds. I won't go into what the story is about, although I'm not keeping it secret. But I think it's kind of a provocative idea. It makes you think a little bit. And as I say, I'm delighted with the opportunity to be working and doing things, and keep busy and keep creative. And that's what I say to all of you never. It's too short a life to could just sit back and let it happen to you. I think you gotta lead with your chin and make and shape life to your dreams. That's it. Thank you.